What's up, Zox fam? We're back with some more Etheria Restart. Now, we're going to be getting into the Godslayer guns, Heinrich. This is an absolutely insane character for you to have pull, so again, congrats if you were lucky enough to get him. I want you guys to fully understand what kind of machine you have currently in your hands. Now, Heinrich is actually a debuffing DPS, and this is one of the things that actually makes him very unique in comparison to a lot of other characters outside of his attribute. Now, when we go and we take a look at his skill 1 and what he's bringing to the table, you have the farewell shot, where Heinrich fires the last bullet in his gun at the target, dealing 240% damage to a single enemy, with a 45% chance to inflict a 1-turn block debuff. Reaper's Gaze is also going to have it to where each time Heinrich attacks, it has a 50% chance to dispel 1 buff from the target, and if the target has no dispellable buffs, it has an 80% chance to inflict 1 stack of last words, lasting for 3 turns. It is basically going to make it to where the target cannot gain buffs. And then for the last words, it increases crit damage taken and the chance of taking crit hits by 7% up to 4 stacks. And this is of course going to be to the enemy. Now, when we get into the skill 2, the fatal split bullet, Heinrich draws his dual pistols and shoots aimlessly, dealing 180% damage to a single enemy, and then 180% damage to a random enemy. And finally, 180% damage to all enemies. And if the target has no buff that can be dispelled, there is a 65% chance to inflict a 2-turn anti-heal. An anti-heal makes it to where basically the target cannot receive any healing. And then lastly, for the inevitable fate, Heinrich unleashes a barrage of deadly firepower accumulated in the Reaper coffin, dealing 3 hits of 100% damage to all enemies, with the final hit having a 65% chance to inflict a 2-turn block. And for every 1 stack of last word on the target, it increases the skill's crit damage by 30%. All tons of damage scaling. Really what is going to be enabling this is obviously the landing of these debuffs, and of course it's going to be making it to where your target is rendered helpless because they can't give themselves any sort of defensive layering, whether it be a defense up buff or any sort of shield, because he's able to block those buffs. So there's a lot of value that you're able to pull from a character like Heinrich, not only in PvE but also in PvP. Now, moving on to modules, I would definitely recommend for the early game the Onslaught set, which on a 12 matrix bonus is going to be giving you an attack increase of 45%. I would also say that the Bramble set can definitely work as something to experiment with, since it is able to give you on a 8 set bonus a defense increase of 10%, and Animus has a 25% chance to counterattack with a basic attack when hit. And remember that this can be quite lucrative considering that Heinrich is basically able to buff block with the skill 1, and then also increasing the crit damage and the chance of critting against the target that they're hitting. So this can be quite lucrative. Now, when we start getting access to some more of the mid game to late game sets, I would definitely recommend ones like Momentum. Momentum is actually going to be giving you on a 12 matrix bonus a crit rate increase of 12%, and when attacking, for each debuff or control effect on the target, damage is increased by 6% up to a maximum of 30%. And then you're also going to have sets like the Harvest set, which is going to give you an attack increase of 10%, and when attacking, if the target's HP is above 50%, additionally ignore 30% of their defense. I would also say that once you get to the point of getting to sets like your Cataclysm sets, the Swift Raid has been one that I've absolutely loved, just because it allows me to fulfill some of the speed requirement that I need, but also giving me a little bit of an additional amount of damage. So not only is this giving 15% speed, but it's also going to give you an additional 20% attack, which can be quite lucrative. There are a lot of different options, and you'll have to try to figure out what best suits whatever build you're trying to aim for, but these are just some suggestions. Now, as far as some of the set bonuses or main set stats that you want to actually aim for, I would definitely recommend that you want to go for crit rate, attack percent, and I would definitely say attack percent in the early game. If not crit rate, attack percent, depending on what that rarity or what the quality of gear is that you might have at that moment. But ultimately, as you start to shift and you start to work in better gear and getting better or more optimal options as far as matrices and even just some of the scaling of some of the main percent stats that you'll have, I definitely would say effect accuracy is going to be a really big substat for you to have, but you're definitely going to want crit rate, crit damage, and crit damage. As far as skill investment, I would highly recommend for auto, especially when you're considering one of the places that Heinrich is going to extremely excel, which is going to be Terra Matan. Definitely for autos, the skill 3 is going to be one of the most valuable things. If you're not landing the buff block from this ability, this could actually make or break whether you're able to actually complete the run just from the initial beginning. So what you're able to get from the first node here is an increased damage multiplier to 100%, but when you get to the second node, it will increase the crit damage boost of each last word stack to 30%, And then at level 4, it increases the chances of inflicting your block buff ability to 50%. And then also it then will reduce the skill cooldowns by 1 turn. Now, if you don't mind having a little bit of manual gaming, then this would actually alternate between the skill 1 versus the skill 3 being a priority first. And with the skill 1, what you're basically going to be getting at the first node is an increased damage multiplier to 240%. The second one is going to increase your chances of dispelling buffs to 40%. And then you're also going to increase the chance of inflicting block to 25%. And then for the last node, it increases the duration of last words to 3 turns. And then lastly, you're definitely going to be looking at the skill 2, which is going to be the first node increasing all damage multipliers to 170% damage. The second multiplier, or the node here, is going to be increasing the chance of inflicting anti-heal to 65%. The third node here is going to increase all damage multipliers to 180%. And the final one is going to be reducing skill cooldown by 1 turn. Now, as far as shell recommendations, I would definitely say in the early game, you'll have ones like Agent Lizard. I would say after that, you would have ones in Apate, for example, the Buddha Panda. After that, I would definitely say you could take a look at Phoebian, where you're going to have options like the Twilight Knight. After that, you'll have ones coming like in Nico Nada. Well, you'll have the White Fang, one of my personal favorites. So after the owner takes action, follows up on the main target, dealing 2 hits of 120% damage, and on a critical hit, increases the owner Animus's crit damage by 5% up to 10 stacks. Now, as far as some pros and cons when it comes down to Heinrich, I think one of the biggest pros is that he has the ability to not only buff block, but also being able to scale his damage that he deals and the chances of doubling that damage by critting. And I think that this is something that is extremely valuable because not only is it paired up with that, but he also can dispel buffs. And this is something that is going to enable him to being not only a powerhouse in PvE content, but a powerhouse in PvP content. Considering that a lot of opponents you're going to be coming up against are going to have a ton of buffs. And I would even argue that most of the meta and what is really going to be extremely predominant and potent is actually going to be revolving and engulfed in a lot of buff-oriented comps. Now, of course, with that, him also being able to proc a anti-heal and also making that a ability that also is going to work in conjunction with more dispelling or buff removal is also something that is going to be extremely huge, considering that some of the strongest units in the game are units that either self-heal extremely well or restore HP really well for their entire parties. I would definitely say as far as cons, he runs into some of the typical I'm a DPS and I like to be a glass cannon issues, is he's going to be squishy, right? I think that that's definitely one of the things that you're going to have to deal with a lot, and a lot of different ways that you can offset that is maybe by giving him a shell that gives life leech, or other ways of you restoring him is obviously pairing him up with really solid support to maintain and keep his health up. I think that that's one of the biggest things about Heinrich is that in a lot of cases, one of his other cons is that he is going to need to be with a character that efficiently rotates him properly. You can build him with a somewhat unique build if you want him to rotate better than what maybe an average build would be for him. But for most average builds, you're typically going to want as much damage as you possibly can, and having him rotate into a whole setup for him to be able to take advantage of a defense break, or him also being able to utilize his last words debuff. I hope that this video was able to give you a lot more insight on not only how potent this character can be, but also just how ridiculously layered he is for him to be a debuffing DPS. I hope that this character is an absolutely amazing adjustment and enhancement to your account. And let me know in the comment section down below some of the builds that you may have tried or that you're kind of coming to find that you like on this character. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe to the channel for more Etheria Restart content and more videos like this so that you don't miss out on news and information that you need to know about some of your favorite characters. That's going to be that with this one, guys. Everyone, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.